we're doing a movie review today. In whose name? I've got my movie critic scarf on. I watched Megadoc yesterday, the documentary of behind the scenes filming Megalopolis, and I'm inspired by Francis Ford Coppola. You know, he's always got a scarf on. Anyways, so I didn't actually watch In Whose Name in theaters because I'm located outside the US and Nico Ballesteros, kinda messed us over with that. That's okay. But the first person to put it on streaming or torrents, at least, is definitely going to heaven. I'll tell you that much. This movie, honestly, very interesting. A lot of thoughts on it, and that's what this video is about. So let's go ahead and dive into In Whose Name. Make sure to like this video if you did, subscribe, and comment down your thoughts on the film. Now, nothing to say about the production. I love the production. The delivery of it was incredible. Would I have loved to see more of Nico's footage? Of course. Of course. But that's just me, right? The way the story and the narrative, the through line, absolutely incredible. And it's way more subtle than I had thought. Of course, Ye is going up against the devil in our world today. And of course, these are things that, some of his more educated fans understand. But the way they delivered it through this documentary, or I guess the way Nico delivered it, very well done. Good job, Nico. Now, to get into the actual essence of who Ye is and what this movie is essentially wrestling with, or trying to get us to understand, it's this whole universe. And the movie leaves a lot of open space, I find, for us to interpret what Ye is saying. And also Ye does that as well when he says something, just a space to let it linger, to let it sizzle, and for us to maybe marinate on a thought that's so outside the box, and to see this incredibly gifted, genius level innovator who is pushing things forward as the true artist does in a society that definitely is not given a vision. The poets, the artists paint that vision for a way forward. Ye is doing it to such an extent, way more than anyone else. And seeing his childlike outbursts to protect that at all costs and to make it his mission post-hospital is inspiring, to say the least. And it's an idea, it's a feeling, it's an energy, and that's why Ye will continue to live on as an idea, after he's gone. Now, when I had my many awakenings about who Ye is in our time today, and the things he sets out and strives to do, which a lot of he's already accomplished, and he would say what he would do before he did it. And so that's why, I want to be on the right side of history. And to say you're a fan of Ye that's such a weird word, a fan. It's like, are you a fan of a protopic future for humanity where we're actually successful on planet Earth? Like, I don't understand what that means. That's what he's for. And like I said, when I had my awakenings of Ye, I'd always think about, like, man, he's just like he's a white dude, but he happens to be black, so it's perfect. Because he could turn that black button on in the European civilization created by white people, and he could actually take things even further to bring that energy into it, because he knows what it means to have been raised in a ghetto in a city. And so he starts off in the total bottom of the totem pole of society. He makes his way up, and he doesn't forget where he came from, you know, and there's something about that that made me feel like Ye's gonna, end racism. Because through him, we can actually understand, you know, who black people as this kind of like the protectors of God's earth are, and who they could be when they're living in their essence out of the conditioning, and they're like the gatekeepers of paradise on earth. And to see Ye come out on the other side and still continue to fight that conditioning that is so deeply ingrained in all of us. It's like he is Ye. He's so Ye. He's me, he's you, he's us. Ye, the most used word in the Bible. You. And it's like this whole spectrum of consciousness that this documentary shows is the essence of being alive. And to do things to such a degree how he's doing it every single day, without a doubt, the right side of history, I'd say. And it's in our lifetime that we should strive to create, this new earth, because clearly the systems we have today in place are not nurturing to life. They're not pro-life. We don't cultivate consciousness anymore. Global IQ is at an all-time low. The society, civilization does not nurture humanity's evolution. And this documentary is just a reminder of what it takes to actually go against the current, parameters of existence. They've been like this for so long, and it seems like the parameters are like trying to lock us in right now or something. And Ye's that voice in the wilderness, just like, you will not tell me nothing. La, 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 la. So, that's kind of like what I saw the documentary showing, a lot of what he's been on, and how with time, and thank God for this, and thank Ye as well, because it seems to be a snowball effect, and it's just getting bigger, faster. They don't kill Ye, and it really is, how shall I put it, inevitable. But this whole idea of labels, getting rid of labels. I mean, what's a label to you? I'm interested in other people's perspectives, because that's kind of what it is as well. I mean, that's what the documentary shows. He's going against the labels, and that is what's so interesting to me, because without labels, you strip people completely naked. If Adam, Eve, wear nada, he's in between, but way more fresher. We're stripped completely. And what are we without society's labels on us? This devil's playground we exist in, on the grid, in a society which has this frequency and targets the root chakra for us to be living in this like heavier, lower frequency vibration, lower state, and feeds our every corrupt, lustful desires. What do you call that, if not the devil himself? And so fighting with all these different things it's just such a good idea to place in your mind. And this is the beauty of what Nico did capturing this documentary, because it's like, Ye is like, he's the future. He's like the way out. Everyone should embody and live as Ye, to be free and to help Ye. But we're winning people over every single day because they can't go on like this if we're actually going to survive. We're in this crossroads right now as a society. And this documentary is so divinely placed at the right time. It's bigger than all of us, you know. And I notice, I'm just going about my day differently after watching the documentary. I'm like interacting with people, more lovingly in the grocery stores, picking up a bag of chips. Like, this is barely edible, you know. Thinking about things in society, you get rejected from an architecture school. You pay for the application. They don't even have the gall to tell you why they rejected you. I have the sneaky suspicion that it might have been that I'm just way too ambitious and the personal statement scared them. Things like that. And it's just incredible to me. Like, how do you not tell people the reason? Do you know how many people work in the universe? The bureaucracy is insane. And most of the time, they're just shopping online anyway. So, might as well make use of your time while you're working your 9 to 5. It's just, there's so many things that currently society has that we no longer need. And Ye is like someone who is literally creating the new parallel structures that will exist once the current designs, the current things are going to be obviously corrupt. People start seeing it, becomes common sense that these avenues of existing are done with and no longer worth it. But it comes with us having a standard for ourselves. And so when people step on Ye's feet or his toes, that defensiveness is very interesting because he's just been this man has been to hell and back. And it feels so, it's raw. Like a lot of people have been saying this documentary feels. It's what happens to someone who's been, taken and just had so much trauma done to him that it's actually incredible that he's still alive and he's still holding on. And you'll never take that from me. To such a degree that he just bursts out like, stop telling me what to think. It's really good. What does it mean to be yourself? Your authentic self. To be as God made you to be. Not what society places on you. Not your upbringing, your conditioning. But to really see things at face value. And continue to rise up and evolve and upgrade as a person in all the dimensions of being. Physically, spiritually, mentally, and to continue upgrading and updating your software in the simulation we exist in. When I first heard of the documentary, it was very interesting. It was announced like a few months after I changed my Instagram name to The Future's name. And then Nico announced on his Instagram that he's been working on this doc and it's going to be released called In Whose Name. And At first, I thought, in Jesus' name. And I was about to change my Instagram to that. But of course, it's all for the glory of God, and that's what we do it for, and that's what we've got to establish here on earth out of a necessity and as a moral imperative. So AI, or the new paradigms and new rulers, these crooked, you know, I don't even want to say humans, because they're not. They're like inorganic or something, but these actual like demons are trying to steer us into the cyberpunk dystopic world. And right now is the perfect time for us as a collective to think about what kind of world we want to be in. Where do we want to go? Because we collectively create that. And the artists paint the picture of like, what about this? We could go here, into this direction. That's why in French, the word for director is réaliser. Pour réaliser, to realize. I got some images stuck in my mind. I gotta hit him the perfectest time. Okay. And in whose name is really, with everything we've thrown at Ye. You're this. You're just a producer who sells beats. You can't rap. He raps. Oh, you're just a rapper. You know, you'll never be in the fashion industry. Yeezy over everything. And the online stores are really proving that. And the fact of how much Yeezy has actually changed streetwear. Do you realize every time I go into a Nike and Adidas, all the designs look like Yeezy? The flip-flops, the new shoes, Skechers even, everything is like so Yeezified. You know, to say one day he's gonna marry a porn star. To take the symbol that society worships so much. To do that. To have kids with her. And to cover her up and put her on a Closed on Sunday video. In whose name? For the glory of God, of course. To continuing to show us what society could be. And now to be worth these billions of dollars to continue just like becoming bigger and bigger. You know, like in that one scene in the film where he's talking about like what he wanted to do. I think it was in Saudi Arabia or something. You know, we got to bring this and we got to expand and, you know, across the border, create this perfect getaway for everybody and show the world what Africa could be. Or, you know, I forget where it was somewhere in Africa. And then his cousin to step in and be like, no, we can't do that. No. And he's like, stop telling me what to do. It's like a breath of fresh air almost. Because while he was talking about it, I'm like, oh man, like I pray that he could do that. It sounded so good. And then she just comes in like, no. And she's like, you know, just really telling him, you can't do this. And then Kim's just crying like, I get told no all the time, every day. Sometimes it's just a no. You know, one of my greatest buddies, shout out to Manny, is in the film industry. And he does a lot of his own films. And what's so interesting is I was ADing, assistant directing, one of his short films recently, and it's actually a web series. It's actually a web series about this guy named Lil Kid who's influenced negatively by hip hop and the rap scene. and he grows a following. He starts to live stream, and he's showing people how immersed in that world he is, and he ends up overdosing and dying. It's a meditation on modern music and what it's doing to teens. Keep an eye out for that. Make sure to follow me on my Instagram, by the way, if you're digging the things I'm on about. It's at the future's name. But anyways, he tells me on set, right, one day, after just finishing a movie with Sofia Coppola or something, he tells me, I don't take no for an answer. That's the trick. And so, Ye just needs to be surrounded by more people like that, I think. But all of us should embody that. Because if something's placed on our hearts, it's placed there. Not by accident, not by chance. There's no such thing. We're meant to realize these dreams and these things placed on our hearts that we know intuitively we were going to do that. And we will, and it shall be. Like Ye added to the toast with the architects. Yeah, so I don't know if that was much of a movie review. I think it was just a review on Ye, meditation on him and his life and what he symbolizes, and truly the greatest artist to ever exist. If you think about the influence on all these industries, in space, and that scene with James Turrell and Claudio Silvestri, oh no, not Claudio Silvestri, with Axel Vervoet and James Turrell. Turrell, the architect of the Rodin crater, amongst other things. Like, he works with light a lot. And Axel Vervoet's just like the greatest, like, unspoken legend of wabi sabi, and the greatest art collectors out there, who really just knows how to, just uses the imagination to such an extent, and understands beauty to such a degree that he's able to manifest it in rooms so beautifully. And to talk about Jesus is King and the performance in the Rodin crater, and they were filming an IMAX movie for that as well. We gotta get that, That's a whole other bag. Like, that's the thing, this movie definitely bears watching more than once. Like, I have it on right now, no joke, as we're speaking, just in the background. It's kind of what you gotta do. But the fact that he had been saved, and he broke free, and it's now in Jesus' name, no longer in his own hands or in his own mind. Now he's being used as an instrument to do God's will on earth. You can't play with God's children like this, to make it through everything he's been through, to come all the way from the bottom of society, make his way up, and to talk about, let's reverse it, and let's bring luxury, and let's make the greatest society, livability, successful humanity, starting at the bottom. And let's give it to the people, is like what all the futurists have always been on about, like Buckminster Fuller. It's always been for the people. It's always been like collectively throughout all the races, all the different countries, wanting to empower the nations, making people prosper, to reverse this like programming that we've been given, to want the best for our future children, for women to actually want to do the greatest thing of the gift of actually giving our species a chance at having a future. That's been clubbed, suppressed, and indoctrinated by nonsense to the women of today. I don't want your girl because that girl look like a man to me. Your home look like a man to me. My therapist can't handle me. Okay, I think I've gone on for way too long. It was supposed to be a really short, less than 10-minute kind of review, but alas, we've made it. You've made it this far. Let me know, chat. What's going on? Am I losing my marbles over here, or what's going on? You let me know what you think of it. And yeah, it really is. Why do we play victim? Good times are ahead. It's really a beautiful time, truly. And we have to recognize the geniuses, the visionaries, and let them shine. We don't put a lamp under the table. You put a light on the table for it to be what it is. And this vision that artists